Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei was the Dragon Emperor of games and got harem? Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Life is not something I take all too seriously. This started when I was about 5 years old. Hi to Issei, that's me, had a birthday party with his family and friends. Well, I was supposed to. Everything was fine until I got down the stairs from the top of the apartment complex to greet my parent. My eyes weren't their usual light brown. They had become an orange and turquoise, orange to the right and turquoise to the left. To my parents, it was a horror and a nightmare that they had the day of my birthday, but to me it was the one true present I had received. The change of color instilled a change in my body. I had great power, an unbeatable power, a truly immortal power. The eyes of the demon that lived within my body's spirit, the demon called Yubel. She gave me the power to give lives to spirits, a power I later coined as Spirit Realizer. Yubel was my saving grace and the voice that gave me desire. She was able to convince those around me that my eyes were normal. She gave me a hobby which I pursued to its height. She became my first true friend in life. Even if her methods were roundabout, she was the angel that guarded me. The hobby that she got me into was trading cards, but more specifically Yu-Gi-Oh! Most forms of trading cards had spirits to them as they were based or designed on what is already real, but their spirit is weak and much too difficult for me to truly realize. Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards on the other hand were different, they seemed to stem from Yubel's whole being. Realizing their spirits was easy, it wasn't simple but completely doable from the get-go. Each type of card had similar functions, but some were different entirely. The ritual cards, for example, stopped my ability to realize any other until they were defeated and the monster took form around me, granting me its power and look. Yubel's power didn't stop there. The field spells not only changed the battlegrounds, but they could also create a secluded barrier around me so I can train in the specific field without anyone knowing until I was tired. She taught me to fight, she taught me to dabble in everything. She made me a true jack of all trades. At the turn of my 12th year on this earth, my parents had spoken to me out of the blue about a topic that they never really cared for before. It rekindled our relationship, as weird as it was. They had entered me in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament for no reason other than making me happy. Of course the money was probably an incentive, but the one they entered me for wasn't a top national one. It was a more private event with a much smaller grand prize, but a grand prize nevertheless. With the help of Yubel, I took my A game and showed my parents that their trust in me and my hobby was not for naught and that I was truly into it. We did just that, winning the whole tournament with ease thanks to Yubel and the more average opponents at the event. From there it spiraled in regards to the series and its tournaments. Due to my win I was entered into other tournaments, bigger tournaments, and continued to show my prowess and skill with Yubel by my side. You could call it cheating, but it went never more than support. She gave me the willpower to go forward and not to be scared of the world just because I was different. Entering high school was something by itself, it made me truly appreciate all that Yubel had done and was continuing to do for me. Top of my class in both sports and academics, I was in a place of my own compared to others and it showed. I was somewhat segregated for my first year in high school. I wasn't conceited, not in the slightest, I was just not that friendly to either gender. Everyone had a reason for doing what they do, very rarely does someone have no reason, which in truth is still a reason. The guys wanted to get close and sponge off my accomplishments, try and get close to the girls that try to get close to me. The girls try to take me for themselves, have a future that is perfectly set for them. Thanks to Yubel, I could freely see what all their reasons were for getting close to me and for even bothering to try to get to know me. There was a few people that were honest in trying to get to know me, the girl more physical in her attempts, but it wasn't for me. Even if it was, I would outlast them even if I did take to them and enjoyed their presence, but before all that there was the point that I really didn't. The biggest point being that none of them shared my interests. My way out came towards the end of that first year in the public high school. Places were opening up at a private high school that was turning co-ed for the first time. It was a renowned school called Kuo Academy. Many girls who had graduated from that school went on to do very well with themselves, especially in college. I had applied for a place in their school, and a reply saying I was successful came very quickly. The fact that it came quickly was not that my prospects seemed great for the reputation of the school. Well, for any ordinary person it would be that way, but it was not. The paper held small traces of magic, according to Yubel it was devil magic. Multiple sets of the uniform came to my house. 2 thin strips of black ribbon, 1 black tie which swirled into a heart-shaped point, 2 black blazers with white accents, 2 black unisex knitted sweaters, 4 white short-sleeved dress shirts with vertical linings, and 2 pairs of black pants. After giving them all a slight look over, I went with the sweater, tie instead of the ribbon and blazer. Most of the guys would probably forgo the blazer and sweater completely, with the rest picking the blazer. Weeks had passed by since the start of my second year in high school and first year in Kuo Academy. The school was much more pleasant than the others for me, whether that was due to an unfamiliarity between the girls and us males or whether there were points on the extreme side of the spectrum for us. There was the famous prince and the infamous perverted duo. The names pretty much explain everything that has happened so far. The prince, who was Kibayudo, went every day being bombarded by the female population of the school, either being asked out or just to spend some time together. He had skillfully declined each and every time. Then there was the legion of males who tried their advances on girls, none getting through, especially so for the more perverted ones. Their particular exploits became common knowledge from the second day. I fit leisurely between Kiba and the rest of the male population. I kept myself out of the public eye but was still a popular figure within the second year, students mainly as the top of the class. It would seem that I was set on being the valedictorian when my year graduates, unless someone can catch up in some way. Some students had also started to call me sensei, after rumors starting that a student or two had overheard a conversation between teachers as they went over my records and achievements. The various clubs around school had spent copious amounts of time trying to recruit me into their clubs, even the girls' kendo club tried a few times. I did my best to stop these peacefully, that by me taking up refuge in the school library where I took to reading a book and helping out whichever first years were brave enough to ask me for help despite my bland gaze. This also came into place where we didn't get to choose our class leader or representative that was chosen for us. That was me, and thanks to it, I got to spend time with the student council and one of Kuo Academy's resident devils. I can tell for fact that only one of the two pure-blooded devils here could tell that I was aware of them. The two pure bloods were Sona Citri from the Citri clan and Riaz Gremory from the Gremory clan. The one who was more in the know about me was Sona Citri, the student council president. Despite only Sona Citri being possibly aware of my knowledge, they had both taken an interest in me. I have seen the members of their peerage, or well, the ones I assume as members of their peerage, following me about and keeping a close eye on me when they were near. Both groups stood out immensely. Whether it was due to being a devil or not, I couldn't really care, nor that I knew much. The only thing I could gather from the hubbub around school was that the occult research club that Riaz Gremory was the president of was insanely popular, along with the student council. The president and vice president of each being the top 4 girls in the school. I honestly didn't listen enough to know whether it was based on popularity or just straight up looks. I was asked on my own 2 cents when the boys' votes were coming into play, and I just stared indignantly at the girls who asked me in the middle of the cafeteria before rejecting the whole thing, which if you asked anyone then they would say I rejected them more harsher than was needed. I didn't really care, they were ruining my status quo by just asking me anyway. Finding myself in the library for the lunch break once again, I settled myself down in the lounge area of the library where the most comfortable of leather seats were located. Many people have fallen before these seats and were taken a hold of by hypnos. I just involve myself in a book before the seat can begin its assault on me. Casting the occasional glance over the top of my book, I could feel restlessness in the air. It was something that was being exerted from one of the devils here, and it seemed to have an effect on the students. Whether that was due to seeing annoyed expressions or not, I wouldn't know, but what I do know is that a new devil came into the middle of this area abruptly last night, and nothing has happened since then. Just the annoyance of one single devil. Just as I finished a chapter in my book, I felt a presence coming towards me, coming for me. Looking over the top of it, I saw Sona Citri coming straight towards me. In the background I could see Tsubaki Shinra, the vice president of the student council, in the background trying to catch up. I put down my book in acknowledgement and could see that it was Sona who was creating this restless atmosphere today. "What may I do for you today, Kaichu? I would like to speak to you after school today, once you've finished your duties as class rep. So she'll be inviting me to her peerage." I wondered when one of the two would get round to that. Maybe they saw me as a potential threat that wasn't to be angered. Yubel had said that there were a few I-type sacred gears, and they were all top-class ones at that. They had to have been wary of my eyes, especially with the power that they possess. Casting another quick glance around, I could see the students masking their interest of our conversation by burying their heads in books. "It would be my pleasure, Kaichu. I'll be there." My polite answer seemed to calm her down immensely, as her typically stoic face let out the smallest of smiles before she nodded to me and turned away. Just as Tsubaki-san had finally caught up with a tired look on her face, she also looks a little flushed. Tsubaki-san then gave me a light bow before turning away to catch up to Sona again. Looking to the clock on the wall, I saw that there was little time left for the lunch break. After putting my book back into my bag, I stood up, repositioned my deck box that was clipped to my belt, and proceeded to leave the library, while curious stares were boring holes through my body. Once I had completed all of my after-school duties, I made my way to the student council room, slithering my way through the obnoxious third years. That I stopped for a second outside the room before knocking once and then knocking twice a few seconds after. "Come in." As per the vocal command, I twisted the knob of the door and slowly pushed the large oak door open to fresh-smelling student council room. Once entering, I saw that there was a few more than I had expected, even the two new presences that came into existence while I was doing my few jobs. Closing the door after me, I stepped into the room, quietly casting a silent gaze over the occupants. Those who I knew as the members of the Occult Research Club were positioned to the left of the room, with the pure-blooded devil Rias Gremory, the king, sitting down behind a desk with her peerage behind her. There was the prince, Himejima Akeno, who was described as a Yamato Nadeshiko, and I wholeheartedly agree, Taoju Kaneko, who had been labeled as the school's mascot, some blonde-haired guy from my year, and the famous kendo duo who had spent some time before trying to get me into their club. It would seem like they had jumped ships. If I remember correctly, the final white-haired girl was called something to do with fruits, peaches maybe, or was it actually Momo? Only really the Kaneko girl had taken a slight hold of my interest, the rest were past my tastes of anything much. Not really giving them the light of day, I turned back to Sona, who was looking a little annoyed with Rias. I could tell that because I saw an unpleasantly smug look on Ria's face when I gave everyone a once-over. Aichu, am I to assume that you calling me is to recruit me into the student council? If so, I'd appreciate it greatly if you would go into detail and tell me why one of the members of the esteemed Citri clan is looking to recruit me for her peerage. Once my words had a few seconds to simmer, the atmosphere became more bearable for the student council. They had found a good one. The small, real smile on Sona's face was a pleasant one to see. So I was right, you do know about us devils here. Then allow me to formally introduce myself. I am Sona Citri, and I am the heir to the Citri clan. And yourself? Taking a short breath, I allowed the human aura that enveloped me to slowly strip away to let free the aura that was underneath, the aura that was the result of my fusion with Yubel and the training that I had down with her. I could easily say that my aura was a strong one, something which I could tell Sona was thankful for. My name is Issei, Sona-sama, and I am a demon. With a slight bow of my head, I allowed the wings that I inherited from Yubel to be released out of my back. The demonic scaled wings reveled in feeling the fresh air and the demonic presences around us. I would say that my aura was around middle class in power already, thanks to the 11 years of training. You're a demon. I'm not meaning to potentially push a bad topic, but what of your eyes, even with heterochromia orange and turquoise, is more than just rare. Of course, they are the eyes of Yubel. They are similar to what you know as sacred gears. I simply call the eyes spirit realizer. I can give life to small spirits for some time to either fight for me or change an area. Many years ago it wasn't a very strong power, but with the years gone by and the spirits have accumulated, it has become strong. Strong enough so that I have become immortal, and literally so unlike the Phoenix clan, which claims that their instantaneous regeneration is immortal. My claim is a very significant one, and one that not even my aura can support. The dubious look on Sona's face amplified that thought. You can stab me all you want, I will not die, but just feel the pain. You could pull my heart out repeatedly, but I will not die. You could scoop my brains out with an embalmer, but I won't die. No matter how much I want to die, I simply can't. You know all of this and you know what I want, but not pestered me to get this all over with. Why? Quite the inquisitive girl. I would like for you to know as much as possible before you think of whether I am worthy of being your servant. Just like that. Really? She looked a little surprised that she was already so close to netting a big one. Yes, I am. As long as you let me go to my tournaments whenever they are on. That set Sona in thought for all of 2 seconds before she came to her decision. Then come over here and my pieces will gauge how much you are worth. Nodding my head to her, I then made my way over to Sona, who had her entire female peerage behind her. As I got to the desk, Sona walked round to the front of it and summoned her pieces to start gauging my strength and potential. Sona-sama, one quick question. Am I wrong to assume that you are a lesbian? The nice gaze that Sona once had completely diminished once my words had came out of my mouth. I didn't really need to hear an answer to know that I was wrong. The slight change in her expression was enough, even the small and somewhat restrained laughter from behind me was enough to answer me. I apologize for the question then, not that it would bother me. It was more for Yubel's sake than my own. I do find it distasteful though that Rias Gremory has the gall to laugh. Laughter at something like that is what an immature child or low-class person would do. As a smile rose back up on Sona's delicate features, I could hear Rias splutter in the background, surprised at my words. I wasn't one to stand out, so people always assume that I either say very little or am rather soft-spoken. I'm neither of those things really. The only pieces to react to me were the 7 pawns in her hands, leaving the single rook, knight and bishop. As Sona started to chant, I felt Yubel awaken and rise to the surface. There was no way she would let me become a devil, but I had worked everything else out with her already, so becoming a servant was okay. The 7 pawns lifted up into the air and placed themselves against my torso. As a blue aura took a hold on them, they started to shift around in their position. Darkness surrounding them as they became more powerful, furthering themselves per Yubel's command, making them sufficient to take my body under their control. The once royal blue pieces all turned to a pitch black with creases and veins that lit up in a blue light before slowing passing into my body. The powers of a devil mixing in with mine, my power increasing slightly. My affinity for water magic increased, and I felt the subtle hints for the knight, bishop, rook and queen piece. All waiting for the time I found myself in a position where I could use the pawn's famed promotion. Sona stopped chanting and allowed her focus to drop slightly. A curious but very happy expression came to her face. A smirk that could only be described as one-upping your rival. It would seem that Sona felt that my power was superior to the 3 that Riaz had selected for her own peerage. She then looked up into my eyes with a discerning gaze. It would appear that staying conscious or not showing any signs of anything was unusual during the process. After coming to whatever conclusion she was looking for, she leant over to the side slightly and looked straight at Riaz. Riaz, how we try out our new servants? Haidu-kun versus your 3 new recruits. Ah, I see. She was seeing whether I was okay for combat yet or at least a training session. Don't you think that's a little condescending, Sona? Saji took 6 pieces himself, you know. And? Haidu-kun took my remaining 7 while mutating them all in the process. I'm pretty sure that Haidu-kun will win regardless. Your pawns can also wield swords if they wish. We can also see if Haidu-kun is truly immortal or not. Turning my body round slightly to look at the crimson-haired devil, her look was a slightly troubled one. It would seem that she was coming down from her high now. The fact that she acquired someone worth 6 pawn pieces was thrown out the window at what came with me. From what Yubel had told me, a mutation piece could be worth more than double the piece's original cost, so in all honesty, each piece is at least 2 points each, meaning I take up at least 14 pawns. I wonder how much of that is towards the immortality itself. Fine, even if Haidu-kun is immortal, my cute servants will knock him down. I raised my eyebrows slightly when I heard her call them cute. I could agree with the girls in a sense, but not the guy. I also get the feeling that it's just a part of her to freely call someone cute. Once out onto the school grounds, we made our way to the clearing behind the old school building, which housed only the occult research club and a lone devil presence that I couldn't really get much on. It was pretty faint. With Sona and the others standing with their backs to the building. Riaz and Himejima-san set up a barrier around us to fight it. It wasn't Yubel, but I guess it was sufficient for the 3 newbies here. Taking a short breath, I felt my eyes start to narrow as I looked at my 3 opponents. The blonde boy stood in the middle with shadows covering his fists. A small lizard-like presence filled those shadows. The kendo duo stood on either side of him holding a katana, each courtesy of the prince, who holds a sacred gear called Sword Birth and was the ability to create demonic swords. Yubel, what are the blonde boy's gears? They would be Absorption Line and Shadow Prison. They are both high-class gears in their own right, but are a part of the Vritter series of gears. Leave the rest for a later date. Pretty self-explanatory, the line absorbs power, while the shadows hold you like a prison. As he is new, the line will be separate to the shadows, so look out for them. Thanks Yubel, I owe you one yet again. In my mind I saw Yubel just wink at me in reply before disappearing back into my subconscious. Taking out my deck from its holster box, I flicked through it until I found Relinquished. Taking out his card, I felt it coming into my mind before it hit a block allowing me to put the deck away. Once I did, the block passed and let Relinquished break free into existence around my body. Navy blue metal plates take form around my lower arms, with silver claws taking shape over my hands, the claws glistening before dulling themselves so they wouldn't rip through my opponents. Turning my head momentarily, I looked at both Riaz and Sona catching their attentions for the spar, and so I can steal Riaz's magic for the spar. I had felt it when I first started here, eradication of anything in sight. What an ability to steal and coin for my own. Start. Sona was the one who alerted the 4 of us to start the game. The 2 kendo duo darted out to the sides as a line seemed to jump out from the shadows around the blonde-haired kid's arm. In response I jumped straight up into the sky getting some considerable height, punching the claws together the crimson destruction started to form within my hands. As the power built I opened my hands allowing the ball of destruction to grow and show itself to the onlookers. My instincts alerted me to the fact that my momentum was about to give way and so I released the destruction that was in my hands. Rather than aiming at either of the 3 opponents I sent it straight towards the ground in the direct center of all 3 of them so the debris could at least deal some damage. The bolt struck the ground dead center in the shape of an eastern dragon, completely ripping up the ground, creating a large crater. Not even debris came out as a result. Shift. Relinquished to Blackluster Soldier. As my body started to be pulled in by gravity, the blue and silver claws disappeared from view around my arms. A large blue shield with golden trim took form around my left arm, hooking itself around my left hand, while a silver sword with a thin gold hilt and grip shimmered into view inside of my right hand. Dropping back down to the ground, I quickly brought the shield up in front of me and then batted the incoming line away from me. Promotion is allowed. Hearing that from the side, the tone in Ria's voice as she said it was a little distraught. The difference between us was substantial, of course it is. I've been training for 11 years compared to these guys. I already know how to fight and use magic, getting a scratch on my body would mean I got too complacent. Promotion. Knight Rook. 2 knights came from the Kendo duo, while the blondie went with Rook. I decided against using a promotion, it was unneeded, and even if it was I was already at the level where I could promote to Queen. They then came again, all at the same time. As the 2 knight pawns came at me from either side, the Rook pawn thrust his line at me once again, but with the shadows creeping along the floor just behind them. He was starting to look a little tired compared to the 2 girls. I blocked the incoming sword on my left with a shield, while cutting cleanly through the weak katana on my right, continuing on with my swing and slicing right through the line. Not bothering to deal with the shadow as I knew it couldn't keep my down at its current level, I bashed forward with the shield, slightly swinging my sword round, slicing through the second katana. The 2 knights jumped back as the shadows formed around my feet, starting to creep up my legs. It was weak, exceptionally so. Even a little amount of my power could override it. I swapped grip on my sword and pierced it straight into the ground. Rupture. The shadows were blown away from me as the ground started to crack up around me, rocks jutting up out of the ground ruining the terrain. Stop. I guess destroying the ground was a bit too much for their liking maybe, or they now had sufficient proof that I was definitely stronger. Though I guess props can be given that they had a bit of coordination, but it wasn't really that lengthy, so who knows what the end result in the eyes of Sona and Rias. Disappear. The sword and shield then disappeared from sight, back into their card. The barrier that was put in place now disappeared from view. It surprised me a little to see that the ground stayed as it was. The surprise became apparent on my face along with the direction of my eyes. Something wrong, Haidu-kun? I'm just used to stronger barriers is all, the terrain fixed itself. Bringing my eyes back up to Sona as I replied, I saw another look of happiness on my face. She must have been pretty pissed about losing out to Rias. I wonder how big their rivalry really is then if Sona can show such expressions like this. Then what were your powers you showed just then? How could you use the Bale's power of destruction? Bale, but Ria's name is Gremory. Bloodline powers, so I'd guess that the Bale's married into Gremory then. The one I used to cast the destruction was relinquished. He gives me a set of metal plates and claws around my arms, despite that I get no strength or defense boost. I just have the ability to take a hold of someone else's magic, even holy magic with no kickback from it. The sword and shield was from Blackluster Soldier, his power wasn't complete as I'm yet to become completely accustomed to swords. I just know the basics, once I learn more I will also receive a set of armor from it, boosting my defense more. These powers are exactly. They'd be the ritual cards from my deck. They are the only monsters which don't fully manifest themselves and instead give me their power directly. I also have another ritual card that is for magic-orientated purposes. As Rias tended to her own servants and spoke to them about whatever, Sona's peerage crowded around me, while Sona herself started to think about what I had told her. Probably thinking of how they could be used, I guess. She does seem like one who pushes brains over brawn after all. While Sona continued to think about how to use my power, the peerage introduced themselves to me. Tsubaki Shinra, Queen. It's nice to meet you. Ryakusaka, Bishop. Tsubasa Yura, Rook. Tomo Meguri, Knight. Haruko Nomura, Pawn. We meet again, Senpai. Nomura-chan. One of the first years I helped tutor in the library, I guess then. It'll be an honor to fight alongside you all. I gave a little bow of my head in response. Sona then came out of her reverie and stuck her hand out for me to take. Raising my eyebrows slightly, I gingerly took her hand in mine and we shook. Welcome to the student council. A week had passed since I became the treasurer for the student council. Putting the idle chatter about equipment and that aside, it wasn't so bad. A little tedious but honestly not so bad. All the girls in the student council were pretty nice, they didn't push trying to get anything out of me, nor did they look unhappy when I said very little or nothing at all. Putting it into thought, Sona's group was the only one that could work for me from the get-go. Of course I'd probably fit into place over time if I was say in Ria's peerage, but here there are people like me and Sona and Tsubaki-san, even Yura-kun fit the bill for me personally. Though I think she was just kinda cold to everyone who didn't like what she did or considered better than her, those primarily outside of the peerage and me so far. Nomura-chan, or should I say Nim-chan, was the hardest for me to deal with on the most part. Like Tomo, our resident knight, she was very energetic and more so than I would want in a friend. Like me, she was new to the group and she had became a member of the group right at the start of the year, meaning she was technically at the same level as me in terms to loyalty within the group. Due to this and the fact that she was one of the more frequent members of the study sessions I held in the library, she took to me the quickest in the group and tried to get me to open up. She took the desk next to mine in the student council room. She would come to fetch me once lunch had started to force me into eating with the whole group. She would also come to drag me out of the classroom during the first break, stopping me from reading my book or reorganizing my deck. She broke my pattern, my status quo. Despite the change that had come to my life in that week alone, I didn't dislike it. When you get into a set routine, doing something different is not good, but doing something that is completely outside of you can actually be fun if you are with the right group. Tomo and Nim-chan proved this to me, even causing me to ignore Yubel's random groans in annoyance. The daily after-school spars were something I took with a slight indifference. The only two I didn't spar with were Sona and Nim-chan. The others I fought in their respective fields so Sona could see my point of being a jack of all trades. Tomo was better than me with a sword, but I held my own. Irakun could hit much harder than I could, but I could definitely strike faster and recover from hits better. Tsubaki-san trumped me in combat with her Naginata, but I could employ my magic on the move unlike her who had to stop, so we ended up in a draw. I defeated Kusaka-chan in magic combat easily thanks to it being the one type that I practiced in the most, especially due to the fact that I had the ability to wield all the elements with relative ease. Then it came down to me with Nim-chan. I was to be her tutor again, but this time in combat. As a pawn like me, we don't have a specific set of talents that we should go for like knights have bladed weapons. Pawns are to be a jack of all trades, the stronger and more effective ones anyway. We are the underdogs of a peerage, and as I already had knowledge in multiple ways of combat, it was me who was to train her. There is also the possibility that the study sessions came into play through one way or another. Her energetic personality went over into how she could move her body. She was very agile with her petite size. It was easy to tell that as had lessons in dance previously, maybe even gymnastics, possibly even rhythmic gymnastics at that. Her body had the lightly toned look that you'd expect from doing those things. It was actually pretty pleasant to see that she was already able to move the way I would want her to, and like with her academic studies, she learned pretty quickly. The last thing to talk about that week devil-wise would be making contracts and going around giving out leaflets to put myself out there. Sona said that new devils would normally pass out leaflets themselves until they got their own familiar to go and receive theirs. Only me and Nim-chan didn't have familiars, as you could only go on the night of a full moon. Luckily though I have the ability to bring spirits to life and because of that, I was able to create Yu-Gi-Oh monsters to go around for me and per Sona's request Nim-chan. I was half tempted to cut off my magic completely and summon Haman from my sacred beasts, but I'm not sure how it would go when I summoned him. His power would annihilate everything here more than likely. In the end I just summoned two winged Kurubos to deal with our leaflets. The only reason Sona allowed this was because it gave us more time to do other things, which is in turn the only reason why new devils get familiars in the first place. In the future we will be going to the familiar forest so Nim-chan can find something for herself and supposedly so I can find some strong monsters seen as I won't die. Then came Monday of the second week and the bitch of a woman I'd have to put up with. I'd woken up early, gotten to school early and before pretty much everyone other than the teachers and Sona and Tsubaki-san. The reason was because my class was having a transfer student, a foreign one at that. Said transfer student was the child of a very influential person in America supposedly, and someone who is a contract and friend of Sona's father, Lord Citri. Because I was in the class that she was being put in, all the work was being put down to me. This work being showing her around the school and town, showing her the best and most famous spots for clothing or restaurants, making sure the boys know their limits and keeping the perverts away from her. The worst part was that she'd be one of my clients, my first one at that. Honestly I wasn't looking forward to it. Sona had shown me her file, and everything led down a route I wouldn't ever be found going down if it wasn't for this. I had sat myself down in the lobby area of the headmaster's office and wait. I was there rather than the teacher's office, because the headmaster would have to grovel and suck up because this company was that influential. From what I saw it had its hands in a lot of pots, primarily oil though. As I waited I brought out my book and then put my glasses on before starting it. I waited a while and got through most of the book itself until the little princess got here. She arrived in her gaudy limo once all of the other students had arrived and got into their classes, meaning that I was going to be late, not something that's ever happened before. At least the reason for why would be known. I had seen the look on the teachers' faces when I dropped by to pick up a few things for the student council. The female teachers all looked a little tired thanks to the male teachers there, even though she wasn't the type I'd talk to let alone even bother of going after. I could agree with the notion that was going around. She was a pretty attractive girl. When she finally arrived in the headmaster's office, I peeked over my book to take a quick glance at her. Average height, well-proportioned body that would definitely make the perverts ogle her, short blonde hair with a small patch towards the bottom at the back that reached down to her lower back. Unlike the rest of the girls already here, she wears neither the shoulder cape or its matching corset. Pretty peculiar if you ask me. She moved pretty quickly too, so I couldn't really see much else, but I knew from the info sheet everything else. Light blue eyes and her name is Marina Price, her family name seemed kinda fitting honestly. She gave me no notice, the same as the secretary as she went straight through into the headmaster's office. Typical Oju-sama although I only know them through a name, I wonder how she'll act in accordance to all these facts. I went back to my book for the final chapter of it, finishing it with plenty of time left before the headmaster finally finished his groveling. Putting my book back into my bag, I relaxed back into the chair that I was sitting on. Looking around the room I could see how bare it was in accordance to liveliness. Plaques littered the walls with the odd photo here and there that had pictures of the headmaster with investors and the like. The only free picture from that group was the one I couldn't see directly, but had seen before it was the picture of the secretary and her young daughter. I could even tell from just looking that she didn't really enjoy being the secretary here. I had overheard a conversation where someone said that the headmaster was pretty reluctant of letting other boys see the wondrous girls here. They were his words, not mine. I tilted my head to the left slightly as I heard the clicking of heels against the ground. I saw Marina standing there expectantly. "Hi do Issei, nice to meet you. Let's go already." I let out a brief sigh as I stood up from my chair. I collected my bag, and before I could even turn to leave her bag was dumped into my arms, and I was slightly surprised at its weight. Swinging my bag over my shoulders, I took her bag into my left hand and directed her out of the room and towards our class, 2B. I'm gonna keep this brief as I can, as the headmaster might have already told you. I'm the class rep, so if anything is troubling you then I'm all ears. Of course you don't have to, but I'm the only person you'll get a truly neutral answer from. The first break is the time I've designated to show you around the school. If any of the girls catch your eye, then you are free to go around with them and befriend them, of course. After school, I'll have my class duties to do as well as pick up my papers from the student council room, but that'll only take a few minutes at tops, so I'll show you around town straight after. You can wait wherever you want, so either in the classroom or in the student council room if you want to keep away from the boys badgering you. Is that okay with you? Yes, that's fine. Good, I didn't want you to say much else. Even the tone she held to answer me was pretty pissy. Coming up to the door to our class, I knocked once before sliding it open with a spare few minutes left before the end of homeroom, and luckily our homeroom teacher was our first teacher for Mondays. Kokono-sensei, I've brought the transfer student. Thank you Issei-kun. Kokono-haru was one of the better teachers here in the school and one who knew about the devils here. She was also one who helped me out, giving me some higher grade stuff to deal with. She was also our maths teacher. Turning my head briefly to look at Marina, I nodded my head to the side, gesturing her to come in before going over to my seat, placing my bag down, and then putting her bag at the open spare seat just to my left. Luckily I held the I'm protagonist seat at the back by the window. Taking my place, the teacher spoke up. "Class, we've got a foreign transfer student today. Price-san, please introduce yourself." Marina gave Kokono-sensei a swift glance before turning to us all with a seemingly superficial smile, which caused the girls to look on suspiciously and the males to have hearts bursting out of their eyes. "My name is Marina Price. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Please look after me during my time here." As soon as I heard that, I made a light groan at the back of the class, which didn't pass by the two girls in front of me, who let out a quiet snicker in response. I didn't bother to remember their last names, but I remembered that they were the Yuri twins, and by that I mean their first name was both Yuri, and not that they were lesbians, though they just might well be. Amidst the swooning boys I could hear some of the mumbled responses from the girls about her blonde hair, ample breasts and light skin. Well, I can see why it could be considered desirable. I couldn't really care less myself about changing to fit the public. If they don't like how I am now, then stuff them. Okay Price-san, I'm sure you have already been informed about Issei-kun, so if you ever have any trouble then speak to him or any member of staff. Your seat will be the empty one beside him. As Marina walked through the class and took her seat next to mine, I could feel the annoyance and murderous intent coming from the boys in the class. Their annoyance at the fact that the beautiful foreign girl sits next to me, the only boy who doesn't show interest in the girls here. Supposedly it was a waste, and I could find no reason to back up that statement. It was ridiculous. That day was not one that I wanted to have again. I'm sure it was as boring for her as it was me, maybe. Despite living in this town for my whole life, I actually don't know it all that well. I don't know which restaurant is best or has the sweetest cakes, or even which clothes store is the most fashionable. All I ever needed to know was where the local bookstore and the train station was. Everywhere else wasn't really needed. That obviously showed on my tour around the town, and even when I took her back to the house that was bought for her and whatever servants she had to live with her. I couldn't help but sigh on my whole way back to school and in turn the student council room. Issei-kun, you are back. How did it go? As soon as I entered the room Sona spoke to me. Life-changing. I didn't know we had so many clothes stores. A soft chorus of laughter from the girls in the room came at my annoyance to the whole thing as I lazily plopped myself down at my desk. I'd have better company from a rotting corpse. She is just a brat through and through. If you hadn't specified that this was a part of a devil job contract, I would deny doing it and dealt with whatever punishment you had for me. Then how about you alleviate that? I turned round to face Sona with a hint of confusion on my face, but once her desk came into view, I saw a chess set out of the desk. Chess. You've played before, correct? Yeah, you could say that. Standing up from my desk, I dragged my chair over to Sona's desk and sat down opposite her. The others here stopping their work to come and watch. I already know that she is meant to be really good, well that's what I get from just looking at her anyway. Winning or losing is completely 50-50s. Taking off my glasses I allowed my eyes to accustom themselves to the pieces in front of me. I watched Sona take her first move, it was a slow one, but not through thought of what she would do. Through her movement I felt like she would play by putting herself against however I moved my pieces, change her strategy as I made my moves. The first two moves went like this, Sona moved her pawn on either end where I moved the pawn in front of my king one place compared to her 2 places and then my king into the gap made by the pawn's movement. Seeing her reaction was a good one because I know by fact that players who actively use their kings never move it so early, they send out their force and then move their king. Sona then moved her 2 knights turning into the center of the board rather than the outside. I then surprised Sona by making the same moves with my pawn and king to my pawn and queen right next to it. I had stumped her there, what I was doing was not in any strategy. It was just simply being bold despite the earliness in the game, but that was what helped me out by the end. The game ended in a draw. Chess in itself is a strategy game just like what Yu-Gi-Oh is, but of course its strategies are completely different, but strategy nonetheless. The game was nothing but a draw the whole way through, on the turns that she just moved a piece were the turns that I just moved a piece, and on the turns where she took one of my pieces was a turn where I took one of hers. Unlike Yu-Gi-Oh I can't set up my pieces before it, so I can't have set strategies like I want, so I simply counter what's been put before me, I look for the optimal places to hit back and put my pieces in those places. While it's a hard and unusual thing to do, it works against any opponent because of how different the tactic is. I'm nowhere near familiar enough with the game to go all out and try to win, so I just counter, I do the same for when I play shogi. The fact that it was a draw stunned the occupants of the student council, they had all suspected me to lose, because while I am book smart they know about me and Yu-Gi-Oh, so they could come to the conclusion that I'm good at beforehand preparation. Amidst a stunned expression were a smirk that Sona held. Again? That was the question that Sona asked while keeping her smirk, and to which I just nodded to in response before moving all my pieces back onto the board in their respective places. In this second game we both made the same play, although this time I moved the queen and its pawn before the king and its pawn. That was my signal for the fact that I was changing how I played slightly. I played it haphazardly making her confidence and thought shift in how I was playing. In the first game I set myself up for the counters, but here I played strangely, but set all of her pieces up so they could be taken in 2 ways when she moved her foremost pieces. The thought which came to me when I wanted to do this play was tightrope and piranha. You are safer off the tightrope, but once you get on it, multiple are gonna try and nip at you. That was the play itself with the forefront pieces being the tightrope, once her pieces got into a suggestive area my pieces, the piranha, would nip and take her piece. The problem being it could also be considered plain old swapping of pieces, as her back pieces could take mine in response. My strategies are off, I keep away from the usual ones because they could make me look better than I am, or simply give the opponent more times to take a piece as they are the usual strategies. This strategy though was the only strategy I had which would result in me getting a win when I played against my family, and it didn't let me down here with the game ending in my win when it got down to my king, queen and pawn promoted queen against Sona's king, with my king being more forward in the attack compared to my queens. This itself elicited more stunned expressions that were kept during the whole game, this time though Sona was as stunned as her peerage. I, myself, was completely indifferent like I usually am. Winning in something like this does not give me a satisfying feeling, and losing doesn't make me feel down at all. It wasn't the hobby that Yubel had got me into, therefore I barely held a true interest in it. Issei-senpai won. A joyful cheer came from Nim-chan, who was behind me the whole time watching both games from over my shoulder, like in a third-person video game. I'm pretty sure that if I wasn't sitting she would have jumped on me in celebration, and for one that annoys me slightly because I can't truly see why she does it. I'm unsure whether her energetic personality stems that far or if it's an attraction towards me, I'm not too sure. He did. A stony response was from Sona, who came out of her stupor and just stared straight into my eyes that were lacking the pride one usually gains from winning. You expected the victory, Haidu-kun. That's what she is thinking. Not in the slightest, Kaichu. Winning in anything bar the lone game I enjoy doesn't spur any joy to me. I don't have an interest in excelling in any other game. Even if I'm good from the start, it really just doesn't bother me. And that's fine. Everyone, you are dismissed for tonight. I was the first to get up and leave the student council room, the reason being I was the only one living elsewhere. The rest of the girls lived together as a part of building up loyalty and familiarity between each other. Sona hadn't asked me yet, and I say yet because I can tell that it's pure skepticism. Even though I keep to myself, they don't really know what I'm like in private. They really don't know if I would try anything if I was in the same house as them. Most might find that a little hurtful, but it doesn't bother me. Giving the group a small wave, I leave for the day. As I left the school building I could see Riaz and her peerage leaving the old school building where their clubroom is located. I couldn't help but narrow my eyes when I saw Saji from their group look at me. I couldn't help but feel like he was scowling at me for some reason. Perhaps he is feeling incompetent. Once I got to the gate I had met up with Ria's group, not that I wanted to, but for some reason they stopped to wait for me. Issei-kun, how is the new girl doing? If you are trying to taunt me then don't bother even talking to me. I continued on walking straight past the group not wanting to bother with anything. My annoyed state rose a point further when I felt the shadows of Ritra spur into life and start coming after me. They were still weak. There was no chance at all that a possible week of training would be able to stop what I've achieved in 11 years. I took no notice of it and broke free with no hassle at all and just carried on walking, only lifting up my right hand to wave back to them in response. The whole top floor for the apartment complex that my parents owned, one that was over 5 stories tall with 6 apartments per floor. With my winnings I decided to buy out the whole top floor just for myself, giving me what I wanted in space and freedom, but still being close to be with my parents if needed. The money then went to my parents for improving the rest of the complex. All 6 of the apartments on this floor were then knocked into one and renovated. I used 2 apartments on one side for living purposes, while the third on that side was for kitchen alone and all its appliances and food. These 3 rooms were all open plan, making it one huge room, but it got even bigger as I used the apartment directly opposite of the only door I have into my apartment used for shelves for all of my books. The next 2 rooms were then closed off and they were my bedroom and bathroom, the bathroom which you could only enter through my bedroom. My bedroom was where I kept all of my Yu-Gi-Oh cards in protective sleeves and in alphabetical order, perfectly sorted into their categories for card types such as monster, effect monster, ritual, fusion and so on. Recently I had to put in a new shelf for the pendulum monsters. Just above this was the roof, a completely barren roof and the place I used to just relax as no one else goes there or can go there really. Using the demonic body I inherited from Yubel, I am able to jump from the outside balcony area up onto the roof. It was also a good collection point, I could see pretty far around especially with Yubel's eyes. Using the height from the building it even gave me a better calculation for where things were, such as the 4 fallen angels and numerous priests in the area. From here I could follow their signatures perfectly, even better now, thanks to the 7 mutated pawns that live inside my chest. As I stood up on the roof with my wings out and my eyes in focus, I could sense a new presence entering the area. One of a nun, one that made the rosario around my neck quiver. It was a similarity, one that breaks the fragile barrier between the factions. One that Yubel desired to create many years ago. Yubel is actually pretty well known to the 3 factions, the older members at least. She was the demonic spirit priestess, the one being who commanded the spirits of the underworld and used them in combat against the angels. Rather than speaking or praying to them, she spoke to them through her eyes, all 3 of them. The third eye being the strongest form of speech for her and the one that controlled the shackles over the demonic sacred beasts, the beasts created from the original Lucifer's elements. Demonic energy, thunder and fire. Yubel was and still is regarded as a high-class demon rather than a high-class devil. The priestess of spirits that range greatly in power from newborns all the way up to ultimate class demons, as long as it was demonic in form she could talk to it and control it. That leads me to why my Rosario is reacting to this new presence within town. Yubel also had the affinity for holy spirits despite her demonic body, she could talk to them and calm them, but she wanted to do more. She was a demon that cared greatly for her own race, and with her caring thoughts in mind, she set out to purify herself so she could speak and control the spirits of the world. This all came at a great price though, a price which was her life. A price which she was more than glad to pay. And that's why she was with me now and why my Rosario was reacting to this newcomer. I held the ability to control all spirits regardless of their nature, but I was still a demon, those 2 points fit hand in hand just like the presence ahead of me. This being had the ability to make spirits protect her through her pure and innocent nature because she was a child of God, but that wasn't just it. She had an affinity for spirits and magic, unlike anyone else. Thanks to Yubel I have the affinity for all magic, but there are some who have the affinity for specific elements. Sona has water, the Phoenix clan had fire and wind, but this girl who was the opposite of me, had the affinity for dragons. Something which made me tingle deep inside my left arm. A human with the affinity for dragon is rarer than rare. Comparable to the true dragon priestesses of old, lacking in information and know-how, they also never knew their greatness. This young girl though, wrapped in the garb of a nun at the same age as me with her long blonde hair and beautiful emerald eyes, had the ability to heal. A sacred gear that wasn't prejudiced and healed anything that she wanted to heal. This girl and I, we are kindred spirits. She is not someone I can allow the fallen angels to take a hold of. Sona be damned, this girl is to be more important to me than anything else. Her reputation and a potential stray status for me has no hold at all over the decision I've just made. This nun will join us, she will join me. Haichu. I shouted out toward Sona as soon as I entered the student council room, everyone turning to me as being loud was not me. Yes, Issei-kun. You govern the area over the day because of school, but Ria-senpai governs the area altogether, correct? Sona's gaze was narrowed at me from my unneeded volume, but also my now prying question. That is correct. Why? There are things which shouldn't be here, so I was making sure who I should tell before I get rid of them. Sona's eyes widened at that, more so my tone than anything else. She knew what I was meaning, but she was yet to know why I brought it up. She was surprised at why I only wanted to take action now, or more like why I wanted to take action at all. You are speaking about the fallen angels and priests, correct? Are you planning to break the small understanding we have? Her eyes had narrowed once again, but they were more like a predator's after its prey now. They would be the things in question. I'm pretty sure that it's safe to get rid of these stragglers, they've been here a while and without permission. Yubel has told me that Azazel can be hard to handle, but even he wants to keep the small understanding in place. If they were here because of a faithful member of Grigori's orders, then they would have asked for permission or let us know personally that they were here and not just take up home in the abandoned church like it was their own home. You seem to know quite a bit. How smart is this Yubel? You'd be hard-pressed to find a question that Yubel cannot answer, Kaichu. If you want to know more about Yubel herself, then speak to Lord Citri, actually it would probably benefit you to do so. Now, I will be going to speak to Ria-senpai. I will do all of my paperwork tomorrow in Kaichu. She raised her eyebrows slightly in question. When I return, be prepared to fill out a transfer paper. I will be coming back with someone you will want. I turned on the spot quickly without waiting for any response. I then raised my hand up into the air, causing the Citri magic circle to take form underneath me and start up teleporting me out of the student council room and over to my destination, the old school building. Coming back out of the circle, I found myself in the small lobby area of the old building. Taking a quick look round, I found the stairs which led up to the next floor and walked up them, while attuning myself to the bleak but demonic feeling that the building had. Following the power and scent, I took a left when I finally got up the stairs. At the end of the corridor I saw Himejima-san standing outside of a door towards the end of the corridor. As I approached her she gave me a small smile and bow in response. What brings you here, Issei-kun? I need to speak with Ria-senpai about some feathers. Himejima-san tilted her head slightly in confusion, but nevertheless she accepted it. Turning on the spot she opened the door to their clubroom and allowed me in, following straight after me. Once I entered I felt a slight ball of disappointment rise up inside of me. All I could see was a small tea party between its occupants in an oddly eerie Victorian style. At least Ria seemed to be doing something decent from the looks of her paperwork on the desk. When the sound of the door closing came, Ria looked up at me from her piles of paperwork to mirror the looks that her servants had, well, most of them. Saji was still scowling at me, and Kaneko was. I'm not quite sure how to peg her gaze, but it didn't really bother me. Akeno then walked from behind me to take her place by Ria's side. What brings you here, Issei-kun? I'm pretty sure your rounds is until next week. Oh, I know about that, I'll be sure to diminish your club funds if this is all you do every day. I'm here to talk to you about feathers, black ones to be specific. And just like I did with Himejima-san, I had confused Ria's and the others in the room, though Kaneko seemed to understand what I meant. What about these feathers? As the devil who governs this area, I was wondering whether you call dibs on any black feathers that I may perhaps come across. The look of realization then came on her face along with Himejima-san's and the prince's. Okay. Since you are here, does that mean you spoke with Sona already? Yes, I have. I came straight here after doing so. Her response? Not too sure. Like I said, I came straight here. Her face changed to one of complete shock, not that I couldn't see why. The type of person Sona is, she would not be happy at all if one of her other members brought up what I did. The point here being that I am very different, I am a demon not a devil. The situation can easily be thought up, for all anyone knows Issei could have got to them all first. Plus when you say demon, more often than not, you'd think of a grotesque demonic monster that only knows how to kill. Maybe I should be completely blunt about all this. I will be collecting these black feathers regardless, they have something which I want. It's also something that I believe Sona can't pass up on, along with the fact she hasn't come after me leads me to believe that she wants it too, meaning I have her support, or maybe that she'll look the other way when the topic comes up for debate. Who knows what goes on inside her head. Seeing as you govern this area, Ria-senpai, I thought I should at least tell you before I collect the feathers. I then dropped my head slightly as I allowed my eyes to take focus and start to shine lightly. I took off my glasses to allow the third eye that lives in the center of my forehead to open itself up to show itself. I will not take a no from you. You can all try to stop me, but it won't work. Then take Saji, Murayama and Caddis with you. They have seen how devils fight, so now they can see how fallen angels fight. As the three that were just mentioned shot surprised expressions towards Ria's, I just deadpanned at her. Gremory-senpai. I may have thought very little of you beforehand, but I did at least think that you had some intelligence. Think for 1 second, Gremory-senpai. I am immortal, how do you think I fight? I've been alone for my whole life, how do you think I will fight? This blonde fuck scowls at me every time I'm near, do you think I'll care if he gets skewered? I shook my head lightly at her before turning to the open window. If they went with just me, they would die 100% of the time. If you want them to see it, then bring them yourself, because when my mission is complete, I can finally be whole. Feeling that her understanding was there, I walked over to the open window and jumped straight out of it, bringing my wings out for a slight second to rapidly decrease the speed of my descent before I hit the ground. Once I put my glasses back on, the third eye closed itself, blending back into my forehead like it was never ever there. Half an hour after leaving the school, I found myself in an alleyway directly opposite the abandoned church. I could feel the presence of Ria's and her peerage behind me, their eyes all falling upon my back as I stood in wait. I had spoken to Yubel about my left arm and why it tingles at the thought of this nun, but Yubel wouldn't respond. I asked her if it had to do with a dragon, but she still wouldn't respond. Her lack of response though gave me an answer, give me a reason why her presence had got progressively less over the years as I got older and stronger. There wasn't that many sacred gears that had strong presences that could trouble Yubel, but there was only one that revolved around the left hand. Braig the Welsh Dragon. The boosted gear and one of the 13 longinus. The gauntlet didn't suit me and my style, not by itself at least. The lone gauntlet could work for my tournaments if I could add the whole dual disc function. Yubel has my eyes and spirit, she has protected me with her knowledge. Through Draig I could utilize it with my body, have him with my limbs. I fight with reckless abandon, with my immortality I just attack and worry about nothing else, using it as the chance to improve in those areas. Even if my skills are shoddy, I'm more battle ready than I am spar ready. As long as potential death is in play, then you can see my full power. Yubel had been around less because she was busy keeping Draig away, keeping him from speaking to me, reaching out to me, but why? I already know about his rivalry with Albion and Divine Dividing. I already know about his mishap with Tiamat, to which I fully agree with him that she shouldn't be so angry around him. The only thing I can think of is my body and the strain I will take on. Thanks to my immortality I can continually boost without care for my body not being able to contain the power, but that leads to two problems. The strain may be enough to actually make me pass out, or something else that I am overlooking. Only Yubel knows why. My body isn't much stronger than a bishop's, as that's how I built myself, more magically orientated. Yubel, allow me to speak with Draig. I didn't have to wait long for a new presence to make itself known to me. Draig's presence was a warm one, but it was more overbearing than Yubel's was. Yubel's was a motherly feeling, but it had its own pressure that made me slightly wary of what she could do in retaliation. Young whelp. I thank you for getting her to release the shackles on my spirit. Your introduction to me fits in with the joining of a devil's peerage, it can be a fitting power to train in alongside these new things. The Citri girl, huh? She is a very smart individual, you may have beat her once, but don't underestimate her. Though I get the feeling you'd never do that for anyone. A lot like Yubel, eh? Draig is as much a part of my spirit as Yubel is, I would guess. Braig, no Ibu. These subspecies are all said to be stronger than their standard states, like yours is just a gauntlet. Could I create a subspecies which makes my body more dragon-like? How so, Ibu? The gauntlet on each arm, up to the elbow. Clawed boots that went just past my knees. Spikes running down my spine like a dragon's doze, along with a tail that comes out of my lower back. Is this possible? I see. You are going to be a very interesting host. It can and will work as long as your desire is efficient, but first we will need a name. Something befitting of a dragon such as myself. A name, huh? Let's see, how about Welsh's instinct? Rather than having a dragonic helmet, we could give me a set of dragon fangs while flushing my hair red like your scales. At the back of my mind I could hear Drake going over what I had said and repeating Welsh's instinct to himself over and over. It's good, no it's great. The style is very much like a dragon's. We are beings of pure power, we love to show it off too, while relying on our flames very rarely or just to clear our paths. It reminds me of my youth. I will lend you my power Ibu whenever you want it. Call upon my instincts as the great Welsh and they are yours to use in battle, but be careful, the instincts of mine may very well become your own at first. Let's see how well you fare in controlling my spirit, one that was in the top 10 strongest when I was alive and well. In the front of my mind I could see the enormous red dragon staring at me, straight into my eyes, Yubel's eyes. A small grin came to his sharp fanged mouth as the left side curled up ever so slightly. Once this night is over for you take a look in your deck box, Yubel has left a surprise for you. But the slight beepy bow of his giant head, I could feel his presence retreat from the front of my mind, disappearing into its depths. Looking upwards I could see that the sun was now starting to fade and set, the once blue sky turning to a sea of burnt orange. The cloud blending in with the orange completely unlike they do during the day. Stepping out from the alleyway I could feel the devils behind me in the alleyway tense up instinctually more so than anything I would guess, or maybe they still didn't believe that I was truly immortal, that's a bit annoying if true. I mean Sona seems like she'd be the harder one to prove it to, but she kinda took to it straight away, maybe she got something when she tried to stare me down. Left lock. Inferno fire blast. Right lock. Red eyes black dragon sword. As I pushed open the gate to the abandoned church, the two spell cards came into existence locking themselves for permanent use or until I said otherwise. A sword made from the spiked scales of red eyes appeared in my right hand, while a spinning ball of black and red took form in the center of my left hand, condensed air whipping around the ball itself as it exuded its own form of power and pressure. With my presence at its minimum I raised my left hand up towards the roof of the church and let loose a trio of blasts from my left hand. Each ball growing in size after leaving the warmth of my hand only to crash into the top of the roof, shaking the area around with each hit. Yubel, please put a barrier up for me. Readying the sword in my right hand, I felt a small use of my magic in accordance to Yubel throwing up a barrier around the immediate area. The priests were quick to show themselves as they rushed through the front door of the church. With each priest that came into the field, I allowed my demonic presence to make itself just a little bit more known, and of course it led the priests to come straight at me. Running the edge of the spiked blade along the ball in my left hand, bits of the power latched itself onto the sword, and with a flick of my wrist, the power was released in a surge of red and black flames. The black flames burning everything on contact while the red flames spread to whatever they could. The priests who kept their distance just fired at me with their pistols, the small bolts of holy energy searing through my body for all of 1 second before disappearing. The blades of light from the priests who engaged me at close combat cleaved straight through my body like it was butter, but my body was quick to re-attach itself immediately after the blade tore through a specific spot. The searing pain lasted a little longer, causing my nearby skin to heat up from the contact of the light, small wisps of smoke rising up into the air around me. With each slash of my sword came a blade of light that refused to function, being overwhelmed and overloaded by the power of my own sword and the inferno that took over the weak holy magic inside of the canister located in the grip. I'll have to pick some of these up later to help with magic consumption. Pointing my left hand straight down in front of me, I shot another ball of inferno, causing the area to shake lightly once again as the ground churned up from the power and pressure, the red and black flames coursing through the veins created from the dirt's uprising. The lifted slabs of dirt changed the terrain and created flame borders from piece to piece. The priests were either a pile of ash on the floor or rolling around, trying to put out the eternal red flames that littered the ground. Demon Tan. Looking up towards the entrance of the church, I could see one last priest who was wielding both a pistol and a blade of light. In the air around him were 3 fallen angels. One gothic lowly, one shady backally guy with a fedora and a slutty businesswoman with blue hair. Focusing my eyes I could see the wavering presences of the nun I was here for and a final fallen angel. The nun seemed to be out of it, maybe incapacitated while hanging in the arms of the final fallen angel, and from what I could tell she was a female fallen angel. Bringing my concentration back I looked down to see 3 light spears piercing my torso. Looking back up I could the 4 in front of me were where they stood and floated. The 3 spears snapped in half disappearing into the air as my body fixed itself getting rid of the searing pain. I hope this doesn't make them think I'm a masochist. I let out a small sigh as I started to walk towards the fallen angels and the lone priest. The priest though was looking sketchy, like he would run away if he could. His allegiance wasn't anywhere, as long as he could kill some devils he would hang around I guess. He is still a human though unlike the 3 fallen angels, he doesn't think of himself as so high and mighty at least that's what I think. The devil will burn straight away from holy magic, they know that as well as I do. As a human he is seen as the lowest on the supernatural food chain, he has to be more cunning, and in turn he will take what I'm doing with a pinch of salt. He'll actually believe that I'm immortal, even if it's just a tad, while the fallen angels will feign belief right till the end. They'll pass it off in their minds as illusions because they are the greater race, and they are supreme. A race of stuck-up crows. Looking at the priest, I could see him reaching into his jacket for something. Seems like it's time for me to leave. I'll be back with stronger weapons next time, Demon Tan. Wait for me, okay? It'll be such a happy reunion. I could only raise my eyebrows in response to his manner of speech before the thing he pulled out from his jacket exploded, sending a blinding flash through the area and bringing out a smog-like smoke to cover the area. Thanks to Yubel, I could see through the smoke and charged straight through the smoke, jumping towards the shady fallen who was in the center. Jumping up to him through the smoke, he couldn't see me till it was too late. I thrusted my sword right into his chest, piercing through his left lung. I then pulled downwards using the spikes of the sword like it was a saw, cutting straight through his chest and down into this left thigh before I pulled the sword loose of his body. Using his shins as a kickboard, I pushed myself off from his body and released another blast of inferno from my left hand straight into the smoke as I flew up into the air. Issei, the girl's presence is wavering. She is dying. What? Do you know how? That'd probably be because of her sacred gear. Grigori have been collecting gears for a long time, Azazel probably made a machine that can take a gear from someone. Even so, that's an automatic death. A human can't live after losing their gear, it's too much strain on their body. I would tell you to be quick, but you were going to have Sona reincarnate her regardless, right? You're okay with her? Not really, she is just the one who has a power like yours, even if she doesn't understand it. She is really the only one I can't object to. Thanks, Yubel. Can you go to her then? Just in case she does die before I get there, let her know all will be fine, and if she has experienced anything like I think she has, then tell her when she wakes up she can finally have the friend she wants. No response like usual from Yubel, but I could tell that she has left my body temporarily to go to the girl. As inferno crashed into the male Fullen's body, the smoke dispersed from the pressure alone, but caused a flurry of black feathers to explode into the air. One down, two more to go before I can move on. Landing back down to the ground, I held my right hand up towards the remaining two fallen, while pointing out my index finger, creating a large magic circle for Citri straight in front of me, with small bright yellow circles dotted around it crackling with electricity. I continued to charge the shot as the light spears rained down on me, piercing my body enough to make the searing pain last through the whole process, to which I could only grit my teeth in response to. Bang. Without any emotion in my voice, I let out the command which allows the remainder of my magic to let itself loose. The yellow magic circles start to spin around erratically as they crank the electricity into the Citri circle in front of me, which shot out pressurized streams of water that tore through the final two fallen angels while allowing the sparks of electricity to run over their bodies and course through their veins, running along the streams up to their hearts. Each and every spark of electricity finally found themselves in the two fallen's heart before colliding, creating a giant surge that cut off their entire flow in their bodies. I let out a small sigh of relief as I saw their bodies explode into black feathers. I felt a little sad that they were that weak that the magic could actually work. Maybe it only worked because of the situation and because I pumped so much magic into it. Ah well, I'll just have to use the bishop promotion more often during training or whatever to try and raise my magic levels a bit more. Walking into the church, I could see the female fallen angel that had taken the nun below to take her sacred gear. I could feel the motherly warmth that came from the gear in the fallen's body. The blonde-haired nun lay motionless in the right arm of the fallen. She seemed to have seen my gaze locked on the nun, and in response, she threw the girl's lifeless body to the side, and as I heard her body collide with one of the pews in the church, I could feel something click in my head. Yubel, how long before she can't be revived anymore? The time limit was never really specified when the evil pieces were created, but if we were to go by when her soul would actually pass on, then it could be anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. I left a part of me in her body so I could give you an extra few minutes, but are you really gonna take that long? I see your point, Yubel. Boo, what's the state of Welsh's instinct? Your body is plenty enough to sustain balance breaker, but that's it really. You need to experience a heavy emotional change, but first you need to use it and get the familiarity. Of course you could just sacrifice a part of yourself to me to get that familiarity out of the way like you did with Yubel. Ow. I felt my head bob to the side as a loud crashing sound erupted in my mind. It would seem that Yubel didn't take so well to Drake's statement. Boy. I just waved off the fallen angel in front of me who was trying to catch my attention. I went back to concentrating on the two spirits in my head as she started to ready a number of light spears. I don't really see the harm in doing that actually. I mean, I'm already immortal, it's not like having a dragon side will change much. All it would entail would be me receiving more pain from Dragon Slayer attacks. It only means that I'd have to fight conservatively, which I'll be learning anyway, as I'll have to learn to fight side by side with the others, so I can't really be so reckless. It's almost forcing me to be safer, Yubel. Shouldn't that make you happier? Honestly, I knew that she just wanted to be the only part of me, though if you think about it, Yubel herself is part dragon, so wouldn't I be becoming more like her? Ah well. Ibu, how about I give you my bones? Their bones? Actually never thought about that as an option. Stronger bones, stronger body structure, of course your body will take on what you want for your gear with the spiked spine and tail. I guess it'll work, I mean you can use magic to force them away, as long as you let them out when you can. I don't see why you couldn't. Then Ibu, when I finally summon your instincts, please do so. Work hand in hand there. Oh. A smart host, been a while since I had one of them. Bringing myself back into the situation that I was currently in, I could see the female fallen angel throwing spears at me. One after another they came. Well, I could tell that they were stronger than the others. In the brief second I could feel the heat. I couldn't tell by how much. Honestly, who would really care by how much? With each spear thrown I could tell that her mind was getting worse and worse, the incomprehension of a true mortal. Immortality is something which can't be attained that easily. Gods can live forever but can be killed. I, on the other hand, can't die, and I can't be killed by any means. Any useful means that can be made possible anyway. Who knows if I would die when Earth collapses or is destroyed? Who knows if I would die from the lack of everything in space? Immortality doesn't really cover the what-ifs like those because they aren't really valid methods to kill someone. Dismissing the inferno from my left hand, I started to walk towards the terrified fallen angel, who continued to throw light spears at me from beside the front line of pews. I kept my pace low as I walked towards the fallen, cutting each of the new spears cleanly in half with my sword. With each passing step the rate the spears were thrown lessened. I stopped right in front of her outstretched right hand. I grabbed a hold of her wrist before jerking her forward and bringing down my sword right into her arm, but only with enough power to get halfway. I felt the click in my head again upon its contact, and I dragged the spikes roughly as I pushed downwards, causing the fallen to shriek out in pain as my sword sawed through her arm, blood splattering around, creating red patches on our faces. Looking into her terrified eyes with my blank gaze, I threw what I had cut off of her arm to the side. The wet slap of skin hitting the stone walls echoed throughout the eerily quiet church. I could feel the eyes of Riaz and her peerage bearing down on my back. I narrowed my eyes at her as I took a hold of her bloodied stump and jerked her body forwards again, only to slash towards her with the sword from below and into her right side, getting it stuck again in her body as she choked on her own blood, spitting it out right onto me and my face. A small smile came to my lips as I felt her blood splash down onto my face. I pushed forwards with my sword, ripping through abdomen, cleaving her body in half. Her waist and legs dropping down to the ground with a thud, her eyes losing the terrified life she once had. I flung her body to the side, the wet slap of skin against stone resounded once again, before what remained of her body exploded into black feathers. Turning towards the lifeless body of the nun that compelled me to come here, I slowly walked towards her. With each step I took I could feel the triumph coming to me. This gave me much more fulfillment than any stray devil I had killed. It could rank it up there with my tournament wins. Even though she is currently dead, I have saved her. A precious life that's meaning was very much like my own. Crouching down in front of her, I lightly placed my left hand on her cold cheek, stroking it gently as I felt our spirits connect. The portion of Yubel that stayed in her passing into mine while leaving the side of orange and turquoise behind, along with the thought of friends when she woke up. Asia Argento, that was her name. A young girl who had been cast aside for ultimately being too kind, a loving heart that was even too much for those in the church. Her heart was too much like an angel's to be human, and because of that she was treated differently. She was used like a simple tool to treat those that were unhealthy or wounded, and here she was killed just for her sacred gear. I felt the motherly warmth that came from the gear approaching me and the nun's body. The floating ball of green energy stopped above her body, as if it was looking at its master's dead body with sad eyes. It stayed there motionless for several before jittering about and moving again, this time downwards, putting itself back into her body. "This girl is your reason for coming here?" I could hear Ria's voice from beside me. It trembled slightly due to the sight I had just given them. Yes, a girl who is much like myself, although she didn't know it yet. Killed by the fallen angels for her sacred gear. I turned to look at Riaz and her group. Their expression was a downcast one. It was a mix of sadness for Asia and slight fear towards me and what I was capable of doing. They now knew that I wasn't lying when I said immortal, and they also know I stick to my guns as a demon. I was not clean with my kill. So Gremory-senpai, are you content? Your new pieces learned how fallen angels fight and also how they do when terrified. You all also saw how an immortal demon fights. I'd call you lucky, but you haven't seen what I'm truly capable of yet. You have more power. Her voice was edgy in response, it was fearful. Very much so. You haven't seen the monsters I can summon to fight for me, the monsters that I can fuse with myself, the weapons I have in my collection. You also haven't seen the sacred gear that I possess. You have a sacred gear too. She shouted out in shock like what I said was completely incredulous. You should know Gremory-senpai that I was born human after all, I only became a demon at the age of 5. What sacred gear is it? I gave a light chuckle in response. What kind of servant would I be if I told you before my master? If you want to know then come to the student council room, I will be telling Kaichu after she has reincarnated this girl. Then we'll see you there. I nodded my head slightly as Riaz turned around to her peerage. Himejima-sen started up the process for their own teleportation, turning I looked at Saji, the blonde male that scowled at me at every turn. Now though his gaze was a vacant one, he was scared and quite rightly so. You will either be scared of me or revere me. As the teleported off in a flash of crimson light, I turned back to Asia and started my own magic circle. The circle for Citri appearing underneath my body while a plain black magic circle appeared under Asia, connecting with my circle for Citri through black and blue sparks. Kuribo, winged Kuribo. Go and retrieve some of the blades of light and pistols from before for me. A soft chorus of Kuri-esque chirps hit my ears as 2 brown fluffballs popped into existence. One floating while the other flapped using its small white wings, slowly taking themselves outside of the church to pick up what I asked for. Bringing my concentration back to the magic circles, they started to flash, casting the black light on Asia, while the royal blue of Citri lit up the darkness of the church. Asia's body rising up into the air, I followed by standing up and putting out my hands only for Asia's body to drop down into my arms. Once her body hit my own, the magic circles went into overdrive and started to cast a spell for teleportation. As my body started to come into view inside of the student council room, I could feel the odd atmosphere that hung in the room. Once my eyes came into play I could see why, other than Riaz and her peerage already being there to have told them of what I had done. Altogether there was 3 people there. All 3 of them pulled on my senses like I knew them, or more to the point that Yubel knew them when she was alive in her own body. 2 men with crimson hair and a man who looked like a male, older version of Sona. Simply put, it would be the fathers and 1 other person. As I took in his form and his power, I could tell who it was even before Yubel whispered it into my ear. IsseixAsia's Lucifer. Ria's older brother and the man who took over as Lucifer after the civil war had ended. The man who stand at the top of all devils in sheer power and presence. I felt a brief sense of weightlessness just before my feet hit the floor of the student council room, the gazes of everyone lingering on me. The 3 older devils looking straight at my eyes while Sona and the rest eyed the blood that was splattered all over my face and body, then finally to the girl in my arms. This girl is something I'd want to say Kun. Sona was the one to speak to me on my entrance. It would seem they wanted to get this part dealt with so the older 3 could speak to me by themselves. Yes, Kaichu. Where I have the power to control the spirits, she has the power to charm the spirit with her own innocence to protect her. She also has twilight healing, a good candidate for your free bishop, correct? I agree, and her name is Asia Argento. I see, then I'll leave her to you. Yura. Looking to my right I saw Yura-kun step forward to take Asia away from me. Even though she was about to be reincarnated, I still felt hesitant and it showed. I had stalled in passing Asia off to Yura-kun, causing Yura-kun to just take Asia away from me. I do, Issei-kun. Whipping my head back round, threatening to throw specks of the drying blood from my face, I turned to the voice. One which was owned by IsseixAsia's Lucifer. This is a bigger party than I had expected. When I told my master to inquire about Yubel, I didn't think that the lords of Gremory and Citri would appear, let alone did I think that IsseixAsia's Lucifer would appear to talk to me. So Yubel told you about us. As to be expected of the demonic spirit priestess, one of the few originals still around. Looking straight at them with Yubel's eyes, I brought a magic circle to my left hand, having water run over the face of the circle as I slowly wipe it across my face, cleaning it of the blood. The water that was left behind dried almost instantly in response to me cutting off the water magic in my hand. I take it you aren't just here to say hi to the inheritor of Yubel's eyes. What luck has been cast to allow me to meet with esteemed figures such as yourself so early on? Is it simple intrigue on your part or something more, something swindling? I looked towards Lord Gremory and IsseixAsia's Lucifer as I said swindling. Yubel didn't leave out the more boring points when she gave me a rundown on the underworld and its current state. She was very exact with point and events, even more so the ones that revolved around a devil that was in my vicinity. You two can try as you like, but my life is my master's, and if you wanted to use the reasoning that you have in mind, it would fit more to my master herself as she is currently free. Additionally, anything that pertains to my life in something like a marriage would ultimately go through my master because she would gain something for herself from it. Another thing would be Yubel herself, it matters not who you pick for me. I leisurely drifted my gaze between Lord Gremory and his son as I spoke, though while I kept my tone pretty bland, not directly picking at them while just stating points. I continued on with this. I am a high-class demon. Even with bylaws of old it would never work. Quite frankly, her current level is nothing more than fitting of only a pawn that utilizes magic if it wasn't for her heritage. If she was half decent I may just well think on the whole matter, but I wouldn't, as this is completely just my thoughts running wild on why I think you are here. Then if we were to ask you of your personal level, like this was simply a human affair. IsseixAsia beat his head to the side as he asked. I found the right side of my mouth raising itself in response. My whole body already knew the reaction and thoughts I have of Ria's Gremory. While the thought of such a thing with a member of Gremory is desirable from an outsider's standpoint, I am not someone who runs by the standard norms of play in life. While she is without a doubt a precious member of Gremory, Ria's is a very beautiful girl in her own right. Even though I can agree with the norm that's been put across, I simply can't agree with it. The world sees her as beautiful, but I am not the world. I do not find her beautiful nor pretty nor cute. Even though I say that, I've been alone in my life, so a physical attraction such as that never interested me. Perhaps it's why I don't consider her as such, but if there is one thing that I can truly stick by, then it's personality. Her personality. No, Gremory's personality is something I dislike. Did I cover all the bases for you? I could see IsseixAsia's face contort slightly as I gave my reasons. I agreed and disagreed right up until the end. I completely denied his little sister, his only little sister, but I also denied her only chance at freedom. Of course I could simply play along with all this and defeat Razor Phoenix, Ria's fiancé, myself with ease. All I'd have to do is wait. I can't die anyway, but where is the fun in all that for me? Additionally, I'm not just gonna let them use me even if I get compensation. No matter the size of the compensation, it would all be meaningless to me. The only thing I would gladly take is the spirit of a phoenix. One that I would easily ask for and will. You wanted to use me to free Ria's Gremory, simply because I am immortal. Nothing else swayed your opinion in all this, but with that very same immortality I can do whatever I want. So how about this? Sacrifice a member of the Phoenix clan to me, a peace offering to an actual demon. Neither first or second son could be offered as they give a lot in the underworld, so that leaves the third son, Razor Phoenix, and the lone daughter, Ravel Phoenix. Ravel Phoenix is the lone daughter, so she is a potential bargaining chip for the Phoenix, plus there are other things to put into play. Razor is the only thing you can offer. You'd be offering his Phoenix spirit to me, which would be killing him, but his spirit will still be alive, meaning his possession would become mine, even this contract to Gremory. Additionally, couldn't the Phoenix clan take me in as a surrogate member at least? I'm immortal already, so I could simply put on illusion magic to mimic the Phoenix regeneration. So how about that? The looks I received were very pleasant on my eyes. The look of many emotions at once, an incredulous thought that I put across. Such a thought was one that would have been typical under the old mass. It was something they'd have done out of respect to their respective sins. That was the difference between new and old. The new only represent the sins, but don't hold true to them, while the old were born from those sins. They were their respective sin. That's the point I have here. I am a demon, so I will run by my demon blood and deal with things the way the demons did. Using the older-fashioned, more barbaric methods. Strike fear into those opposing me, leave little room for negotiation, but I am not completely demon. It's as simple as that. Yubel may have been classed a demon, but she loved her kind greatly, and even more so the spirit she protected. I am not so conceited to throw everything she was out of the window because of my own dislike for Ria's Gremory. No, I was just setting the field for myself and for future times. They need to know that while I am Yubel, I am high to Issei as well. The quicker they learn this the better, so before they spoke their deliberated answer to me I interrupted. No thanks. I said it simply and chuckled lightly at the gawk that IsseixAsia had. His lower jaw had dropped in confusion. He may be a Mau, but I had complete control over the situation and conversation, so I could and was taking it wherever I wanted. To do it at any other circumstance would be considered rude to the supporters of the new, but in this instance I was fine as I was playing on a possible guilt. All you had to do was ask nicely, you know. I'm pretty sure my master doesn't want her best friend and rival go through unhappy periods that she didn't cause herself. Of course, I'd only do it as per order from my master. Though if you want to do it by sacrificing Razor Phoenix, then I won't say no. I allowed my body to then relax as I looked back at IsseixAsia's Lucifer, who had now closed his mouth and was just staring at me, trying to understand me. I was all over the place with what I was saying, but it wasn't incomprehensible. All my points were valid for my place in the devil hierarchy. It was just the fact that I put them out like someone was emptying the clip of a light machine gun. They came one after another without letting the other side get in. I was in control, but I was only playing with control. It was a skill that a politician would love to possess. Then what about Sona, Issei-kun? What's your take on her, from both a devil standpoint and a human standpoint? I hung my head back dramatically for no real reason, so I could angle my eyes towards Lord Citri and his daughter who had just returned from reincarnating Asia. Let's go from both standpoints of the devil demon. The devil consists of the peerage, so I have very little room to disagree. She is my master too, I can only agree. From my demon standpoint, there is nothing out of place. A prodigy, she most definitely is. I haven't seen her skill firsthand, but through looking at her and her spirit, I can tell that a child from her would be a very beneficial one. So finally would be a human standpoint, she is a lot like me, only she has friends. Maybe it's because we go about things differently, but all in all we are rather similar. I could tell that much from patterns alone, but during the 2 matches of chess we played I can tell that there is something else there. It's rather similar to the saying with understanding through swords. I could see the kind of person she was through her strategies and how she deals with each piece individually. On a personal level, I'd say yes, that is if I ever got the chance to. I let out a small shrug before decided to compact my statement. For me, there isn't a reason for me to decline no matter how I look at the situation. Looking to my left I could see Yurikun holding a now breathing Asia in her arms. I couldn't help but let a small smile take place on my face at the sight. I took her into my own arms and could feel the slight change in weight, live weight against dead weight. It was amazing how it worked. Though the look I show now would portray a reason as to why I might decline, but we are demons after all. Once I'd finished the room went completely quiet. The room stayed quiet for nearly a minute before IsseixAsia broke it. It's been rather insightful to hear you talk, Issei-kun. As you are a high-class demon, Ajuka Beelzebub will start on your very own set of evil pieces. Of course they will be nothing like any others, the pieces will fit just like the evil pieces, but will also fit to who you are. I assume that Ajuka will call them spirit pieces. When they are finished they will be sent to Sona, so you can collect them then to use as you wish. Until we meet again, goodbye. I gave a light respectful bow of my head in response to IsseixAsia as did the others when he teleported off. In response to his disappearance I would make my own, balancing Asia on one arm a little awkwardly. I put my left hand round to my deck box and picked out the card that wasn't in a protective case. Bringing it around so I could see it, I could only grin madly as I saw Drake's piercing emerald eyes looking back at me from the center of the picture square of the trading card with his own stats and effect. Issei-kun, is that a new card? That's correct, Kaiju. I assume that Gremory Senpai was kind enough to tell you everything that happened and the fact that I also have a sacred gear as I was human before demon. She did so. What gear is it? Welsh's instinct. I decided to say the name I had made up for the subspecies of the boosted gear, nevertheless it's not like the more smarter people in the room wouldn't understand. That point of mine came very apparent when I saw the wide eyes of both Lord Gremory and Citri, along with the subtle but most definitely visible smirk that lay out of place on Sona's usual calm and cool facade. You are telling me that not only are you immortal, not only that you possess the eyes of Yubel, but that you are also the IsseixHarem. More to the point, you have a subspecies for the boosted gear. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Catch. With a short flick of my wrist, I sent Drake's card flying through the air toward Sona. The card speed started to slow down and hover above Sona's head as she reached up to take it, her usual cool facade returning to her as she looked to the card. Turning the card slightly to see that the eyes of Drake were following her. That response to that I could feel Drake's presence coming to the forefront of my mind. Oh Oju-chan. Salutations to you, young Citri. What is wrong with this dragon? Ah well, I'll leave him in her capable hands for now. I just want some sleep. End of the part 1. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.